If you've worked as a software engineer for any amount of time, you know that one of the biggest productivity killers is reviewing long pull requests. The worst is when you're deep in your workflow and then suddenly get a reminder to review a few pull requests from other developers. And what's even worse is when you open one up and you see it's a 15 to 20 file change diff. Something that should have taken a few minutes now turns into a 20-minute deep dive. Now, I think the problem with many teams' branching strategies is that these massive pull requests are so intimidating to review. They end up sitting in the queue for days, and they end up blocking releases because the reality is nobody wants to go from coding to reviewing. That context switching is pretty tough. And now with AI code generation, this bottleneck I think is only getting worse. And that's because tools like Claude and Cursor are generating code faster than ever, where now the bottleneck isn't writing the actual code, it's reviewing it. The truth is, developers and organizations and on teams are spending much more time now meticulously reading through auto-generated code than actually building out new features by hand. And that is exactly why more organizations are adopting a workflow called stacked PRs, otherwise known as stacked pull requests. So stacking is when you break larger pull requests into smaller reviewable chunks to streamline the entire review process and eliminate the mental overhead of those 20 file pull requests. Now, this isn't an idea that's brand new. Companies like Google and Meta have been utilizing stacked PRs for years. And on top of that, GitHub is starting to support stacking right out of the box. But tools like Graphite have been ahead of this curve for years, and they make utilizing stacked PRs a breeze and extremely intuitive. So in this video, I want to walk you through what stacked PRs are and how it can dramatically improve your workflow in this age of AI code generation. On top of that, I'll show you how Graphite enables you to ship faster and smarter. Now, before we dive into the demo, let's define what stacking actually means. Now, most developers follow a simple Git workflow where they branch off main, they do all of their feature work in that branch, and then they open up a pull request when they are done with the feature work. Now, the problem is, as your project grows or AI tools start to generate massive chunks of code, that single branch can become hundreds or thousands of lines of changes, and nobody wants to review a long pull request like that. They're slow, they're error prone, and they often lead to really frustrating merge conflicts as the main branch keeps moving forward. Now, stacking actually fixes this. Instead of one giant branch, you split up your work into smaller, more dependent branches, each one representing a logical change. So for example, you might have one pull request that sets up a database, another one that builds the API, another one that creates the UI, and then maybe a final branch that adds tests to this feature. The idea is each pull request is dependent on the one before it, forming this stack. And with this stack, reviewers can focus on one small change at a time. You can merge a lot faster, and you can avoid that nightmare of reviewing 60 change files at once in a single feature branch. Now, this sounds amazing, but the reality is, just like with everything in life, stacking has its downsides. And one of the biggest ones is managing stacks manually. It's a very tedious process, and every time you update a branch lower in the stack or your main branch changes, you have to rebase every single pull request above it. And you have to do so in the right order, or you risk breaking the stack and messing things up. And this is exactly where tools like Graphite come in. Graphite gives you all the benefits of stacking, smaller, easily reviewable, isolated pull requests that build on top of each other without the Git headaches. And that's because it automatically handles all the rebasing and all the syncing between branches as you update your stack. So basically, when one pull request merges in, the rest of your stack updates automatically. So in short, traditional Git workflow leads to huge, painful pull requests, and stacking fixes that issue but adds complexity, and Graphite removes that complexity of Git so you can ship code faster. So now that you know about stacking, let's walk through a real-world example of how to use stacking in your workflow. Okay, let's get started. So here's a quick tutorial of what we're going to be building using stacked PRs. So this is effectively a database of exercises that we can search from. And as you can see here, each exercise sort of has various categories and they're all named differently. So imagine you're building out some sort of workout tracking application and you need, an exercise database or an exercise library to search through various exercises. So I could search for exercises that are specific, to machine exercises or maybe to a specific body part like legs, so on and so forth. So this is what we're going to be building from the ground up. So with that being said, let me check out my develop branch so we can start from a blank slate here. And we're going to be doing this with a blank React project. So real quick, to lay out the various tasks that we'll have to do to achieve the exercise library and search and filtering functionality, we'll have to, one, add the exercise list data source. So this might be something like connecting to a database, but for this example, it's just going to be a simple JSON file. From there, we'll have to add in some simple UI to render the list. Then we'll add some nice styling to the list so it's not just plain HTML. And then finally, we'll add the search and filtering for the exercise items. So if this was a traditional workflow and I was following a more standard Git flow strategy, essentially all those tasks that I just laid out would be contained in a single PR. However, to keep things concentrated and much easier to manage and review, we're going to be implementing the stacking technique using Graphite. So the very first thing that you need to do is make sure you have the Graphite CLI downloaded and installed on your machine. It's super easy and you can follow the steps laid out on this web page here. I'll put the link for that in the description. So once you download that, then it's time to start coding, or maybe start prompting, which is exactly what we're going to be doing. So feel free to open up your favorite AI code editor. This could be Claude, Cursor, whatever. I'm going to use Cursor in this case just because it's the one that I use pretty much on a daily basis. Now, the very first thing that I want to do is add in my exercise data set. So I have this JSON file here that contains over 2,500 exercises that a user can essentially search from. And I'm going to add this directly to my repository by simply just dragging and dropping it here in this source folder. So this data set is essentially going to be the root of our stack. It's literally going to be the first pull request that we make. So we can do that with Graphite by running this command gt create with the message option here, and then adding a message. So we'll do add exercise data. We'll hit enter. We'll commit all those changes. So we'll commit the file that we just added. Then from there, we can initiate this pull request with the gt submit command like so. So as you noticed, a web browser opened up and we are taken to the Graphite web app where we can initiate this pull request. So Graphite hooks directly into GitHub. So you can think of this as another UI layer on top of GitHub with much more helpful tools like PR description generation, which I'll click that button. And even pull request code review directly baked into the user interface, which can be extremely helpful. So now that we have our pull request description generated, we're going to hit the publish button here, and we now have our first reviewable pull request in our stack. As you see here, it has the description, it has the diff changes, so it's very similar to GitHub. However, it's all contained within the Graphite web UI. So for now, I'm going to minimize this as we continue working through and adding to our stack. So now the very next thing I want to do is simply just render the list of data on this screen. So I'm going to prompt my LLM and say something like render the exercises with the exercise.json data. We'll say in a simple format, no styling included. So we'll let the LLM run and implement these changes. And perfect, now our list of data is being rendered. And I would say that this is, a good first step and a small enough change to make a separate pull request for. So again, I'll go through the motions of creating a pull request for this on a new branch by running gt create. Again, add the message option and let's say render exercise list. Again, commit all those changes, run the gt submit command like so. This will again pop open the web app where we can then generate our pull request description, publish these changes, and then we now have another pull request added to our stack. So imagine you're working on a team. You now have these two very small pull requests that are very manageable and easy to dive into for your other team members, right? This is literally just a one file change. It'd be super easy to come in here, review, and approve. Okay, so now let's say I want to add some styling and maybe want to use a styling library. So I'm going to prompt my LLM again to add Tailwind and Shadcyan support. So if you don't know what Tailwind is, essentially it's a way to add really nice styling to your application very easily without creating a bunch of style sheets. And Shadcyan is essentially a library with a lot of nicely styled pre-built components. So I'm going to prompt my LLM to add Tailwind and Shadcyan library to the application, including the Shadcyan card. So I'll hit enter there. Okay, great. So that took a minute to run. However, it added the Shadcyan and Tailwind libraries to our application and made some base changes to the styling of our application and added in some various configuration. So this is exactly what we wanted to do here. We didn't want to add too many styling updates because this is going to be a very isolated pull request that is simply just about adding, Tailwind and Shadcyan to our project. So I'm again going to create a pull request here, and we'll do add Tailwind and Shadcyan support. Commit all those changes, and then run gt submit to submit this isolated pull request. Let's go ahead and generate a description. And then finally publish this pull request. We'll review it here, and we'll scroll down and we'll see that it's primarily just changes to our dependencies and then some base level configuration. And this is exactly where stacking shines, because now I have this stack pull request full of just configuration changes that are completely isolated from all these other changes below it, making reviewing this, so assuming someone on my team were to review this pull request, literally just reviewing configuration changes with no feature work intertangled in. And we now have 3 stacked pull requests that we can visually see here in the Graphite web app. However, we can also see the stack through our terminal using gt log and then the stack option. So it'll show the complete stack here. Now the next thing that I want to do is add a pull request where I'm adding some nice styling, so it doesn't just lay out all of these various exercises in a very plain format. So again, I'm going to prompt my LLM here in Cursor, and I'm going to say, can you add modern styling to the list using Shadcyan cards and Tailwind. Let's also add make the code modular and separate out components into different files. We'll hit enter, we'll let it do its thing. Okay, great. So that took me a few prompts to get the styling to look somewhat nice. However, this is what we ended up with. So I'm going to create another stacked pull request with this modern styling, and then I'll create a final pull request for the searching and filtering of exercises. Now, you've already seen me do this 3 times at this point, and I'm gonna, basically follow the same exact process of running the gt create and the gt submit command. Okay, great. So I made a stack branch for the styling, and then I added search functionality. So now users can do things like type for, cable exercises or maybe chest exercises. And now if we open up the Graphite web UI, you see we now have these 5 pull requests that create up this stack to build out this exercise database search feature. And if we go through each one of these pull requests, you see that they are all very small and not super overwhelming to review. They're just a few files at maximum. which is exactly what we're trying to achieve, with stacking. Small, isolated pull requests that aren't super overwhelming for our teammates to review so we can ship faster. So now let's dive into something that's a bit more complex. So let's say I have all these pull requests open for review and I get a comment from someone on my team on, let's say, this add styling to exercise list pull request. And they essentially tell me that I need to make each one of these cards dark themed. So maybe a nice dark background with some white text. To do this, I can go back to my terminal here. And the first thing I need to do is navigate down the stack to the pull request around styling. So to see where I currently am in the stack, I can just simply run gt log short s. So here is my stack. I'm currently at the topmost item in the stack, which was adding the search functionality. And to navigate down the stack, I simply just need to run the gt down command, and I am now down one item in my stack, as you see here. And we can confirm that because the search functionality has now been removed because it's in the uppermost branch of the stack. So from here, I'll modify this list and I'll update the card to be dark with white text. So I'll just prompt the LLM and say, can you update the cards to be dark with white text, making them dark themed. Okay, so that finished running, and now all of our cards have this dark theme to them. However, I now need to not only update this branch, but update all of the branches above this branch. So update the branches above this branch in the stack. And this is where doing this with regular Git would start to get confusing. But with the power of Graphite, they make this extremely simple. So I just need to run git add to stage the commits, and then run gt commit create -m for the message option, and then we'll make this message add dark theme to cards. And then finally, we just need to run gt submit like this, type y, and this will now not only update this branch, it will update all of the branches above this branch in the stack. And just to show you that is the case, if we run gt up to go to the topmost item in the stack, the changes from the pull request below the stack are now in this branch, as you see, with the cards being dark themed. So this is our complete feature. We have these cards with the dark theme. I can search by muscle group, so I can do something like legs, or let's say biceps. And then I can also search by name, so I could do bench press. And that is stacking, my friends. So in a nutshell, I have all of these pull requests that are split up into smaller and isolated, easily reviewable chunks, all building off of each other. As you see, we have develop as our base branch. The very first pull request in the stack was add the exercise dataset. We built off that one with the render exercise list. We built off render exercise lists with this add tailwind and Chatsian support, so on and so forth. You get the idea. And as my team started reviewing my code and code approvals started coming in, I would start merging in pull requests from the stack through the web UI here by clicking this merge button. And again, Graphite would handle all the Git commits like rebasing, force pushing, all behind the scenes for me, making merging this pull request and merging the stack extremely intuitive and extremely easy. So I'm going to go ahead and just merge all of the PRs by clicking merge 5 pull requests here, and then we'll let Graphite do its thing. So that is stacking in action. No massive 20+ file pull requests, no endless rebasing, just small reviewable chunks that will keep you and your team shipping. Now, Graphite is completely free to try. It's an amazing tool, and I'll leave the link below if you want to try it out for yourself. Other than that, thank you so much to Graphite for sponsoring this video, and I will see you all in the next one.